Hello, good people of YouTube, Mountbatten here, and today we're talking about everyone's favorite new class, Submarines. Now they are on their, I think 4th or 5th of live server random battles testing, I think 6th or 7th, maybe even 8th round of testing to the public overall between the testing done on the PT server, then the special Submarines game mode that was released way back. So, at the beginning there, that's something to definitely note. They are definitely taking their time with this new class. They are not rushing it, unlike the CV rework, which was essentially a whole new class in and of itself. So that is something to commend them off the bat with. And if you look at what they've changed, and especially in this round of testing, they have addressed a whole slew of the complaints that many a player had with this class, and they've done a pretty darn good job, in my opinion, of addressing those concerns here, and we're going to go through my experience with this new iteration of Submarines here in a moment. Before we get into that, though, I do want to make my position on Submarines very clear. I don't think they should be in the game. I don't think they were ever intended to be in the game. It's pretty evident by the challenges that they were having trying to get them to work in some manner of balance that they never were intended to be in the game. And if they drop the whole thing tomorrow, I wouldn't shed a tear. But if they are going to be in the game, I want them to be as balanced as possible on both sides of the periscope. Meaning I want the surface ships to have a very balanced time engaging them. Also want the submarines to have a very balanced time engaging the surface ships. In previous iterations of submarines, it was in no way, shape, or form anywhere near balanced. And boy, these are very different boats now. And they are in fact all boats except for the U-2501. It's the only proper submarine now. So the changes they've made so far, they've kind of gone in a different direction with the torpedoes, which I'm very, very interested in, and I do like the direction that they're going. We'll start there at the first, because this is probably the main complaint that many a player had with submarines, was that they could simply nuke you out of existence with their old torpedoes. Well, I'm very happy to report that that is no longer possible, at least with the homing torpedoes. So they have absolutely nerfed the crap out of these torps. And they did what I thought they were going to do, where they increased the speed of the torpedoes up to 86 knots for most of the ships. I think you can get them up to around 90 knots if you build into them. But in the last round of testing, they didn't nerf the damage anywhere near what they should have. But now they have. So the homing torpedoes now on the U-2501, this is the German Tier 10 in the footage you're watching in the background, which the Germans had the most powerful torpedoes of the American and German submarine line during testing, and they still do. They now do a maximum damage of 8,633. That is just, I believe, a little over or under half of the damage they did beforehand. Yeah, that's a big nerf right there. And two, they decreased the homing effect yet again, and I do believe they increased the range at which the torpedoes stop homing on, I believe, just about every ship, including battleships as well. So now they home less, they stop homing further away from the enemy ships. They're still fast though, they are still fast. And when you do hit these torpedoes now, again, you got to consider torpedo protection and all that jazz, and getting the double ping isn't quite as easy as it was beforehand for a couple of reasons that we'll get into here in a moment. So now when you land a full salvo of these torpedoes on the enemy ship, it no longer removes half of their health anymore with the homing torpedoes. If you want to do some major damage to the enemy ship, some major alpha damage, you have to use the standard non-homing torpedoes. These torpedoes do 12,500, which is still less than what the homing torps used to do back in the day. But these are much more powerful. However, they don't home. You cannot get these to home. The best you can do with these is if you're underneath the water, you ping a ship twice, they will elevate to the surface and then continue on straight. They will not track the enemy ship. That's all they do. They're much slower, again at 65 knots, and they have much less range. The homing torps have a range of 14 kilometers. The standard torps only have a range of 6.3 kilometers. Which means if you want to use these torpedoes effectively, you gotta get close. And you gotta get at the surface. Because the torpedoes do not have enough time to go from the depths to the surface unless you're at almost maximum range with these torpedoes. So you have to be essentially at periscope depth or on the surface for these torpedoes to hit within 6 kilometers of an enemy ship. Yeah, good luck with that. It can be done. I do pull it off, I believe, in the first match you're going to watch here. And even then, yeah, it does a lot of damage to the enemy ship. I believe it's a Montana that I hit. But I mean, good God, if there was more than just that Montana around, and even then I'd eat a pretty big chunk of damage doing this, I would have been absolute toast. So I like what they've done here. If you want to get the big damage, you have to put your ship in a very risky situation. Close in at periscope or above depth, very close to a surface ship. A range and depth at which you have to put yourself in danger. You will get hit doing this and probably outright deleted. Let's not forget that these ships are incredibly fragile, and they've actually made them more fragile and much easier to detect with this new round of testing as well. So I like what they've done here with the torpedoes. They've nerfed the homing, they've nerfed the damage, they've kept the speed, which I know these torpedoes are kind of stupidly fast, but I mean, I think it's a good trade-off because you can see where they're coming from a lot sooner now. You can dodge them a lot easier now. And again, if the enemy submarine wants to do some real damage to you, they have to put themselves in harm's way. Now, of course, you can still obviously easily get finished off by one of these if you're at low health and you're out and about by yourself. However, they have made it easier for you to see where these ships are at. In fact, if you're paying attention, you can see exactly where these bad boys are at before they're even spotted, because now you as a surface ship can see their pings. I know it defies all logic and doesn't make sense, but you can see the pings now. Which means that if you're a submarine consistently pinging one ship over and over and over again, and they see where you're at, they could more than likely drop their depth charges right on top of you if they have the depth charge aircraft, or if they're a surface ship and they feel a little bold, they can obviously sail over you and drop their depth charges on top of you as well. So that kind of addresses one issue I had where submarines could just ping for days with no repercussions. If you're paying attention now, you can see where the pings are coming from and drop your planes on those ships. So that's pretty good. In addition to that, now too, you'll notice when I get hit here, you see a little icon up here at the bottom of the screen. When you get hit now, your submarine leaks oil, which leaves a oil spill at the top of the water, surface of the water. Which means as you're putting along with this oil leak, the enemy team can track where you're at and again drop their depth charge aircraft, or if they're again in a submarine or a cruiser and feeling a little ballsy, they can sell it over to you and drop depth charges pretty much on your exact location. So yeah. Now, they haven't gotten any real buffs to survivability. They've reworked the way the damage con has worked. The submarines now have the fast damage con, and they only get 4 charges of that. Let me double check, see if I got Superintendent on. I do have Superintendent on, so they get 3 charges base, 4 charges with Superintendent. Which means you can only get hit 4 times and put out your oil spill if you want to put out your oil spill every time. Also, too, they've increased the chance of flooding via a depth charge hit to 100%. So now, every time you get hit, you're going to have a flooding and you're going to have an oil leak. So that means if you're on the surface and you get hit, you're going to have an oil leak. You can dive, but now the enemy team can see where you're at, so you have to make that decision. Do I want to use my damage con here and stop the oil leak? But now if someone hits me with a depth charge, I'm going to have a flood on me, and now I have to burn another damage con to put that out. So now you've burned through 2 of your damage cons. So this is a pretty big nerf to the ship's survivability here in that way. I believe they've also slowed down the submarines as well. I mean, they can still go like 27, 28 knots for the most part. On the 2501, I do have the speed flag on, and she can only go 27 knots now. So the 30-knot submarines are a thing of the past. I never really had an issue with that. Most of the ships in the game accelerate and decelerate way faster than they ever did. And of course, adding a piece of cloth to these ships magically makes them go 5% faster in the first place. But that was a complaint that the community had, and I mean, if you're going from a historical side of things, it is fairly valid. But I mean, this is an arcade game, so other other ships, again, these ships did not maneuver anywhere near this fast in real life. If you want a better feeling for how these ships maneuver in real life, go play War Thunder, and even then, in naval realistic battles, they still maneuver way too fast than how they would in real life, so I don't really have a problem with that. With the speed that they're at right now, I feel like this is about as slow as they can get and still partake in the battles. Most of these ships would do like 12, 15 knots on the surface. So obviously going 15 knots in like a tier 8 game you're going to be useless. I know someone's already typing, well that's good for them, they should be useless. Calm down there, sir. It's an arcade game. Again, you have to consider people want to play these ships. There is a portion of the community that do want to play these submarines. They get downvoted to hell on Reddit and attacked on the forums and in YouTube comments when they say that, but there is a portion of the player base that does want this. That's the reason why they said they weren't planning on adding them in the first place. Many a player were asking them to add submarines in the first place. Underwater, they have less options now for their depth setting. They can work at the surface, periscope depth, go down to operational depth, and then maximum depth, which I'm very glad they added an operational depth, because on the dev blogs it said that they had 3 positions: surface, periscope, and then maximum, which doesn't make sense. You should be able to sit, just chilling underwater, not at maximum, not at not at periscope, just chilling at operational depth. You can do that, which I think is very good. They have also reworked the spotting to now where essentially if you're underwater, unless you get within 2 kilometers of a ship, which is assured detection, you aren't going to be able to spot anything. And then when you're at maximum depth, you can't see anything as well. So they've nerfed that too. Another complaint that I'll often see is that they can outspot enemy destroyers. I mean, the reason destroyers are so stealthy is because they're small ships that sit low on the waterline. And I mean, these are tiny ships that sit extremely low in the waterline. So I do believe it makes sense that they have the best concealment normally at their tier, because again, it's a very small silhouette sitting in the waterline. It would make perfect sense that it's kind of hard to see. I mean, they were in real life as well. Again, especially at periscope depth. So I believe right now this is probably the most balanced this class has been. They are on the weaker side in my opinion, but I do believe this is probably where they'll stay until they get released in full. And I mean, it makes sense that they're not doing nearly as much damage as the other ships are. I mean, obviously, I'm just someone that's picked them up. I play them on and off over the past week or so since the update, so I'm not like a submarine ace by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm doing around 70 to 80,000 damage in most matches. I've had a couple of matches where I've done a little bit over 100,000 damage, but it's the same issue I'm having with other ships at higher tier. The matches are ending way too fast before I can really get anything done, but playing them is quite fun. Sub versus sub combat underwater is incredibly fun. I love it. I love fighting other submarines underwater. It's tremendously fun, and I'm glad they've maintained most elements of that in the game as well throughout the several iterations of the test. And it is a nice change of pace, going from this massive surface ship to playing this sneaky deaky boat, trying to get under the water, trying to get behind or on the sides of the enemy team, and of course trying not to get spotted and blast into oblivion. Oh, that's nothing too. The changes to the depth charges via the ASW aircraft. Now you have a smaller area that you can drop the depth charges on, but it's much more precise. So when you do aim correctly, you're going to absolutely destroy that submarine's health pool. Because most planes now drop 3 or 4 depth charges in a straight line in a small grid square. So if you aim correctly, you are going to hit that sub directly and do massive damage to that submarine. So it rewards your aiming a lot better. As I said in the dev blog, turns out it actually does that in the game as well. So that's my 2 cents about this version of Submarines. Again, I would be just as happy if they just threw them out the window tomorrow, but I do believe they're in a pretty good place at the moment. Once you learn how to deal with them, they're really quite easy to deal with. If you get pinged, just watch for the torpedoes, and once you see the torpedoes, just maneuver out of them like you normally would, pop damage con, turn hard one way or another, and honestly, if you're paying attention to it, you can dodge them pretty easily without damage con. I mean, you do have to drop what you're doing, and yes, that is inconvenient, especially when you're fighting several other ships at the same time, but it can be done quite easily. And again, even if you do eat all the torpedoes, unless you're in a destroyer or a light cruiser, it's more of a mild inconvenience. In most cases, again, you know, if you're at low health, but if you're at full health, it's not terribly bad. A lot better than it was beforehand. A hell of a lot better than it was beforehand. But I can still see why they're annoying while players don't really want them in the game. I understand. Like I said, again, throw them out the window for tomorrow for all I care. But I do think they're in a pretty solid place at the moment. So let me know what you guys think about this in the comments down below. Hope you're having a wonderful Tuesday. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to drop a like, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. We're on our way to 35,000 subscribers, and I cannot thank you guys enough for that. Hope you're having a wonderful day and have a wonderful week. And hope to catch you guys in the next one.